Today we're going to look at lesson 3, making scaled copies. And before we do the first problem together, I would like you to look at it on your own. The idea behind this question is that you're solving it mentally. And if you look at the answer choices, it's only asking for an estimate. It wants to know, should the answer be more than a certain number or less than a certain number? Now, if we look at the first problem, since we're solving this mentally, we need to get some numbers that we can work with in our heads to come to an answer. And 25 times 8.5 would be a little tricky to do in your head unless we were to break it up a little bit differently. If I were to take 25 times 8 to begin, 25 times 4 is 100, so 25 times 8 would have to be 200. And then looking at this factor, knowing that I have 8 groups of 25, I'm going to need another half of a group of 25. So 25 times 1/2 would be half of 25, or 12.5. Now combining those to get my total product for this problem is going to clearly be more than 205. For the next question, two of the two factors that we're multiplying both have long decimals in them, and that's going to be very difficult to do in your head unless we look for something close. So since we're looking for an estimate, if I were to take two factors close, like 10 times 1 to equal 10, then what I can do is, knowing that I rounded each of these factors larger, so really 10 is greater than what the actual number is. 1 is greater than what the actual factor is. If I were to use numbers that were smaller, then I should get a product that's less than 10. Choice B. Finally, looking at the first factor in the third problem, 0.24 is very close to 0.25, which is 1/4. Now, if I'm looking to determine if my product is going to be more or less than 2/10, what I want to start figuring out is 1/4 times another factor equals 2/10. So what's that other factor going to be? Another way to think of that is what divided by 4 equals 2/10. So the answer would be 0.8, 8/10. 1/4 of that is going to be 2/10. If I look back at the original problem, I'm finding almost 1/4 of a smaller amount. So that means my answer would have to be less than 2/10. For the next activity, we're going to be drawing scaled copies of these 4 original images. And what it tells you is that the first 2 will be using a scale factor of 3. The second 2 will use a scale factor of 1/2. Now, with what we've been talking about with scale factor, if we have a scale factor of 3, then our scaled copy is going to be 3 times larger than what the original is. So each one of those lines is going to be 3 times larger. If we look at figure A, which I think probably most of you would prefer to draw, we have the 4 sides, and they all are going to have to be 3 times longer than they are in the original. What I'm going to do is go ahead and demonstrate with figure B here, because I think it's a little bit trickier, especially because of this big diagonal line here in the center. Now, because it's not a closed figure, like it's not surrounded by sides, it's going to be much easier to draw this if we surround that figure with a regular image. So looking at figure B, if I were to trace around this with a rectangle, it would fit inside a rectangle that's 4 units by 5 units. Now, knowing that, because my scale factor is 3, my scaled copy is going to be now 12 units by 15 units. It's going to get much larger in those two dimensions. And the sides of, or the lines of the figure are also going to get 3 times bigger. So this line of 1 is going to become 3. This line of 3 is going to be 9 now, and so on. So let me go ahead and demonstrate that. First, I'm going to make that rectangular space. That's going to be 12 by 15. I'm going to start here in the corner where I'm comparing to the corner that I drew around the original image. And going over 1 unit in the original image is now going to move over 3 units in the copy. So I'll be starting here, going down instead of 3 units, 9 units, because it's 3 times greater now. And that's the first image. Then starting here, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to go down instead of 1, I'm going to go down 3 units here. And this horizontal line, which was 2 in the original, is now going to become 6 in the scaled copy. And now, once I have those 2 parts drawn, I just need to connect them as best I can with a straight diagonal line. And that'd be the scale copy with a scale factor of 3. Now, if I were to go back, looking at figure C and D, I could draw an outline around figure C, but I really don't need to, because I can see the length of all the sides of the figures. I can see that this is 2, that this is 7, 6, 5. And I'm just going around and labeling the lengths of all of those. Now that the scale factor is 1/2, it's going to take each of these measurements and it's going to cut them in half. It's going to shrink the scaled copy instead of enlarging it like the last example that we did. So I'm going to start with that first vertical line that was 7. And I'm going to now draw it at half the length, so 3.5. The bottom was 6, so now it's going to be 3. And I'm just going to continue to do this. This next vertical side was 5 on the original, so now it's only going to be 2.5. Okay, and that would be my new scaled copy, which hopefully you can see is now 3 by 3.5, 3.5. Half the dimensions of what it used to be. Go ahead and give this a try with figure A and figure D on your own papers, and remember that they have 2 different scaled copies. Okay, finally, we're going to take a look at this diagram, and this being the original diagram here, it says that Diego and Jada want to scale this polygon, so the side that corresponds to 15 units in the original is 5 units in the scaled copy. Very important word. Remember yesterday we talked about the word corresponds or corresponding, and we're talking about this same location in the scaled copy. So they're going to take this side length of 15 and they're going to scale it down to 5. So their scaled copy is getting smaller. Now let's look at what they drew. First, looking at Diego's drawing, hopefully you notice there's a big problem here. We do not have the same shape. It's not connected. But he did follow the directions in that his scaled copy has a corresponding side that is 5 when it used to be 15 in the original. Clearly there's a problem though. Now if we look at Jada's, she did the same, but her diagram, her scaled copy, does look like the original polygon. So the questions ask basically what happened? What did they do? The first question wants to know, what operation do you think Diego used to calculate the lengths of his drawing? So let's take a look at that. On the original, this side length here was 30. Now it's 20 on his drawing. On the original, it was 36, and now he has 26. So what operation did Diego use to turn those original measurements into what is now in his drawing? Remember also that he took that corresponding side of 15 and it's now 5. The only way he could have done that is to multiply 10, take away 10 from each of those measurements. Let's look at what Jada did. So going with the same idea, her original side of 30 became 10, 36 became 12, and 15 became 5. Now, probably most of you are thinking divide by 3, right? But here's the problem. So Jada's drawing is a scaled copy. We've always said that to do a scaled copy, you must always be multiplying. So if we're thinking that Jada divided by 3, we would be incorrect, even though we would technically get the right answer. Since we always have to be multiplying when we talk about scaled copies, we did a little of this yesterday with some of your practice problems. But what could you multiply by and get the same result as dividing by 3? Hopefully what you're thinking is that we could multiply by 1/3. 1/3 is the reciprocal of 3, and it does the same result. If we multiply by the reciprocal, we get the same result as dividing by 3. So this would be your answer to question 2. And then yes, we would not get a scaled copy for Diego's drawing, only with Jada's, because she followed the rules of scaled copies. Finally, let's look at Andre, who wants to take Jada's scaled copy and make his own scaled copy from it. He wants to take the side length of 4 in Jada's copy and turn it into a side length of 8 units in his scaled copy, so he's going to be getting larger. And he wants to know, if I just add 4 units to the length of all the segments, is that going to get me a scaled copy? I hope you're all thinking, no, absolutely not. The rule for scaled copies is to multiply. If 4 is added to each of the sides, we're going to get into the same problem that Diego had, where the figure doesn't look the same. There might be a gap, or some lines might start to overlap, and we're not going to have the same figure as the original. We always have to multiply. All right, and to answer that question, if Andre was trying to turn a side length of 4 into 8, he would be multiplying by 2. That would be the scale factor he would use, but he would have to multiply by 2 for all sides of the figure. Now, for the summary, please take a look at that and review all the information that we talked about today. If you turn to the back of the page in your packet, you'll see there's just one more activity for lesson 3 called making scaled copies. And this is a quick review of today's lesson. I do want you to try it without me going over the questions for you. This is a great summary of what we just learned today. So please answer the question that has you draw a scaled copy of figure ABCD. And then question 2, talking about the 2 triangles, triangle Z and triangle M. All right, I'll be on Zoom all day today for those 4 different Zoom sessions. If you have questions, if you want to go over how you just answered those last 2 problems that you did, let's talk about it. I can explain everything there. Or you can take a look at the video that I posted on the Canvas page to see those resources. Everybody have a great day.